Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest updates from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the situation in the mineral-rich east is worsening with each passing day. In the latest, the DR Congo has asked Chad for military support to aid its fight against the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels in the east. Reports indicate that the DRC's regional integration minister met with Chad's president, Mahamat Idris Deby Itno, to seek Ndajama's assistance, both militarily and diplomatically, in the conflict. However, the actual details about the discussions have not been disclosed by either side. Reports suggest that N'Djamena is considering to support Kinshasa, but Chad has yet to officially confirm. Now, Kinshasa's latest push to garner support for its cause comes as volleys of gunfire rang out in eastern border town amid clashes between the allied forces supporting the DRC and the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels. The M23 has been moving further south toward the town of Uvira, which shares a lake border with Burundi. Since they seized South Kivu, province's capital of Bukavu, over the weekend, and reportedly entered the Kamanyola town earlier this week. The rebels' advances have caused a major panic among the residents of Uvira, who reportedly described scenes of looting, bodies lying on the streets, and DRC soldiers fleeing on boats across Lake Tanganyika. Moreover, the crisis has also fueled a sense of worry and anxiety in Kinshasa, which is roughly 1,600 kilometers away from the conflict zone. Residents of the DRC's capital city are looking to move their families abroad, amid open talks of a coup against the president.
The government must take its responsibilities, review the functioning of the army, which appears to show bias, and restore the chain of command. For example, we note that Bunagana was taken without any effort, as was Minova. It is clear that the chain of command is not performing up to its responsibilities.
Meanwhile, the M23's unprecedented territorial gains and capture of valuable mining areas have stoked fears of a wider regional war. The UN Security Council urgently met on Wednesday and called for decisive steps to avert the crisis from further blowing up. Yet, at the Security Council's meeting, the DRC sharpened its criticism of the international community for their inaction and urged them to hold Rwanda accountable for its actions.
The time for theoretical debates is over. It is now time to uphold the very principles that define this institution: peace, security, and respect for international law. International law that is universal and applies to all, even while seeking African solutions. Standing by silently while civilians are killed is not a solution, and certainly not an African one.
But rejecting allegations from Kinshasa, Rwanda said it could not take the blame for the problems that the DRC has faced for long. Kigali further said that the claims that mineral resources were fueling this conflict are false and insightful.
Rwanda cannot take the blame for the problems that DRC has faced endemically. As President Kagame stated in Addis Ababa, and I quote, "We have our own problems to deal with. Congo is too big for Rwanda to carry on its back," end of quote.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has also spoken with his Angolan counterpart and discussed ways to find a peaceful end to the conflict that has killed thousands and displaced millions of people. This was after the African Union designated Angola to be the facilitator for talks between Rwanda and the DRC. The international community has mostly used the same rhetoric since the beginning of the latest offensive, with countries empathetic on dialogue and the rebels' withdrawal, but stopping short of financial and diplomatic pressure on Kigali, as was the case in 2012 when the M23 took Goma before pulling out. Will their approach remain the same this time? Now, to discuss more on this, we have with us Musa Ndunge, an international affairs expert who is joining us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Great to speak with you. Thank you for being with us on First Post.
Thank you so much for having me, Alison, and thank you to the viewers.
Musa, what does the DRC's request for military support from Chad signal about the severity of the M23 insurgency, and how might this impact the regional security dynamics?
Well, you know, the request from the DRC for Chad's involvement in this conflict signals that the DRC government sees that the way this conflict is going is not in a way that would support their particular interests and really the interests of the people of the DRC. And certainly the addition of Chad in this particular conflict certainly signals a widening regional flare-up in terms of this particular conflict, when one considers the different players that are in this conflict and the varying interests that continue to play out, whether you think of the American interests in terms of the minerals in the DRC, or even the Chinese or the Russian interests. And even from a regional perspective, many people have had things to say for players such as South Africa and Rwanda. But, you know, I see the involvement of Chad as a very strategically important one, given the ranking, particularly of its paramilitary forces, which are ranked around 38th, around 145 countries in the world in terms of the gunpowder rankings. And so they will then provide significant expertise and support to the DRC military in trying to push back the M23 rebels.
Right. And with the gunfire erupting in Uvira and growing concerns in Kinshasa, how close is the conflict to escalating into a broader regional crisis? And what role could Angola play following the U.S. diplomatic engagement?
Well, certainly, you know, there is fears around the continent, including the international community, of how this particular conflict could flare up into a broader regional conflict. We know the importance of Central Africa, of East Africa in terms of not only continental trade, but as well as global trade as well, and including the sort of trade routes that are very critical to global trade. And so a broader regional conflict is certainly one of the risks that are happening in terms of this conflict. And the issue here is how certain powers within the region are sort of positioning themselves. You clearly see that the rivalry between Uganda as well as Rwanda is a factor in how both these two countries have positioned themselves on opposite sides of this particular conflict. Then you include South Africa in the mix and Southern Africa, and the fact that you've had this confusion between having two regional sort of peacekeeping forces operating in the region. And then thirdly, Alison, is the issue of understanding what is required in terms of the kind of military support needed pertaining this particular conflict. While you and I are having a conversation about peacekeeping, what in actual fact should be happening is peace enforcement. And Angola's role has been one both of providing a political solution to this particular problem, but I think their role could go a bit further in perhaps providing sort of a military support, especially given the failures of the Kenyan military intervention that was supposed to hold Eastern DRC, but has failed and led to the need for a SADC peacekeeping force to be called upon in terms of the conflict.
Musa, it's always great to have you on the show. Thank you for being with us and your valued insights and analysis on the latest out of the DRC.
Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup. Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Namaste, Mr. President.
Bharat Kelogon, Komeri Namaste.
How many people generally follow you in interviews?
Typically in a month, we have viewers up to 150 million. That's more than twice the population of France. And in the last 2 years, we had 3 billion viewers. So I say, Laurent, this is your chance to be famous. You're on Firstpost. One word to describe your equation with Prime Minister Modi.
Amitié.
As India and France work together, Are you creating a new era of non-alignment in the technology space?
India is a training superpower. 1 million engineers a year, more than all of Europe and the US combined. So we have that partnership. We have a partnership on the environment and the economy. We also have civilian nuclear programs, and that is something we've developed far beyond the France-India relationship. So we want to work together on AI.
And then comes China with its DeepSeek, creating models at a fraction of the cost. Did that innovation take you by surprise? Did that breakthrough make you sit up and think, what did the Chinese do and how?
But what did DeepSeek do? They took everything that was already available from the last AI model, and then they recalibrated it.
So are you going to ban Chinese AI in France?
So we don't have this American approach of banning tech because of where it comes from.